This is a hidden gem major, and we want people to join us in at least understanding what it is. We just wanted to raise awareness for the major itself. But we wanted to actually do something with the organization. That's how we came up with this whole idea of we can actually just work to solve different problems within the UVA community.
Have you ever been in a group project, either in school or in work, and you thought to yourself, this just isn't working? Personally, I can think of so many times where it's felt like there were too many cooks in the kitchen, or maybe there's a mismatch of expectations. Even when there's enthusiasm around a vision, sometimes the workflow just isn't there. A new student organization, Become a Problem Solver, or BAPS, hopes to address this very issue.
Hi, my name is Katie Fidler, and I'm majoring in systems engineering with minors in global sustainability and science and tech policy. This past semester, we received a grant from the Jefferson Trust to support the advancement of my new organization at UVA called Become a Problem Solver.
BAPS works with UVA's CIOs, or Contracted Independent Organizations, another name for student organizations and clubs at UVA. The goal is to help CIOs identify the various sticking points in their groups and use their system engineering expertise to resolve them. Katie Fidler, the founder and executive director, chatted with Sound on Ground's producer, Sara Bastianelli, about this new service organization.
So we actually originally started as an advocacy organization for systems engineering. And we started by wanting to just explain to people in a word what systems engineering actually is. A lot of people were coming in as first years and had no idea what the major was. And the department itself was actually proliferating really by word of mouth. And so we wanted to start a little bit earlier with people and tell them right away what we do. And so for us, it's problem solving. That's kind of what we narrowed it down to. And obviously every career in one way or another is solving some sort of problem, but we really do that directly by working to get to the root of problems and working systematically or finding systemic issues to solve the problem at its source. That sounds great, but how do we actually do that? It's mostly by means of optimization. We apply technical systems expertise to solve problems at their source. And so that means normally adding an element, removing an element, or changing some element of a system to make it more efficient or optimal, solving problems in the most effective and efficient way. And so we take a lot of optimization courses and stochastic decision models, deterministic decision models, trying to figure out how we can solve problems in the best way we can. Really, BAPS was started to tell people that, like, this is a hidden gem major, and we want people to join us in at least understanding what it is. Even if it's not the right fit for them, we just wanted to raise awareness for the major itself. But then we got to the point we were telling people, we have this awesome problem-solving major, this can be a really good fit for people, but we wanted to actually do something with the organization. That's how we came up with this whole idea of we can actually just work to solve different problems within the UVA community. And we worked backwards a little bit because when we began sourcing clients, we found that our niche was probably going to be service organizations because we have, I think, over 700, 800 CIOs at UVA now. There's a lot of overlap, a lot of redundancy, a lot of inefficiency. I myself and a lot of our exec board right now, we're in a lot of different organizations at UVA, and we had all noticed a lot of inefficiencies in different organizations' operations. And so that's what happened. We realized that these orgs were having problems and they started reaching out to us, telling us about these problems. We started reaching out to them and wanted to hear more about them. And that's how we got started. We spent this past year, we worked for 8 different service orgs and I think facilitated around 18 projects. And it got to a point where we were doing awesome, but we needed funding. And so the Trust is helping support our advancement, support us in hosting the events that we host, which are mostly advocacy events for systems, but also getting people excited about working for these service orgs. So yeah, we're really excited to keep it moving, but we've been only in operation for a year now. So we're excited to keep it going.
No, that's so exciting. You actually just started to touch on one of my questions, which was what actually is systems engineering? And is it under the umbrella of computer science?
We like to say that we combine a lot of different elements of engineering. Mostly, I would say computer science and data science are the first ones that come to mind for most of the people within our major and faculty as well. But I think the beauty of systems engineering is that the methods and processes that we learn and the tools that we learn can be applied to really any domain. And so a lot of people come into systems because they know they want to be engineers or they know that they're maybe more STEM minded, they like math, but they're not exactly sure what they want to do with it and they don't want to pigeonhole themselves into one specific major. So at least that's where I found myself. I knew I wanted to do something in the environmental domain, the climate space, but I didn't want to just jump into civil, for example, where maybe I was going to be doing more specific technical work in one area. I wanted to see how I could solve problems in different ways. Our systems engineers go into a variety of different roles. A lot of them, we get the rap for being the businessy form of engineering. So a lot of them do go into the business space. But I, for instance, am going into policy. And I found that the efficiency principles and optimization methods translate really well to a government space where there are a lot of inefficiencies that are being attempted to be being solved in different ways right now. And I think there's systems thinking, there's a new way to go about solving these problems. So I like to bring a different perspective in the government space. That's what I've been working on doing the last couple of summers.
When Katie says COM, she's referring to our business students and our commerce program at UVA. Katie shared with Sara about some of her recent summer jobs and how she's been putting her system engineering knowledge to work outside of her classes.
I think that's really the main draw of people to systems. What does this actually look like in practice? Like in concept, this sounds great, but if you want to hear about classes that systems engineering students take, human machine interface is one. So we take user experience classes to really understand problems from the client's point of view. How can we best display information that we find and information on how we're solving these problems to a client in a way that makes sense to them and that's intuitive. There's a technical element, but you really feel like you're producing something for someone at the end of it. And so a lot of times you're producing something for a client. And so that's why a lot of people go into consulting. We hear a lot about maybe systems and comm competing for similar jobs because we have maybe less of the business background than comm, but we have a more technical background, so it can bring a little bit of a different perspective. Last summer, I accidentally worked for the White House, but it wasn't my initial plan. Plugging a really another amazing program here at UVA called PIP. It's the Policy Internship Program, and it's under the engineering school. It's led by Professor Ryder Foley. He's wonderful, but we got placed at different science policy internships in DC, and I was placed at U.S. Global Change Research Program, which coordinates all of the environmental efforts of any executive agency that is working in the climate or environmental space. They coordinate, which was really interesting to work for a coordination agency because there were a lot of redundancies and inefficiencies that I was clocking. I was an intern, but I felt like people listened to me because I was able to bring a different perspective and think about, okay, why are we doing this the way we're doing it? And understanding how to ask those questions, because in my courses, I'm like, you have to come up with a solution that's optimal. And then now I'm working for NASA. It's called NASA Develop. So it's a NASA sponsored program, but technically contracting for them. I'm working on an equitable energy development project. And we're essentially trying to map where solar hubs would be most efficient and effective within a tiny little town in Delaware. But we're trying to model it in a way so that it's scalable to other regions of Delaware and beyond that. So creating something that's replicable. But yeah, so that's been great too. So very different roles. This one's quite a bit more technical, which is what I was looking for. But either way, I mean, again, I came in not knowing really any of the software, like the ArcGIS stuff that my team was going to be using for this summer. And still, I found that my contributions have been able, I'm the one who's asking the questions of like, okay, why are we doing this? Can we do this way? In the scoping process, I've been pretty helpful thinking about how we can maybe do things in a more efficient way or in a way that solves the problem better in the end, or more thoroughly or more exhaustively.
What makes you different from a consulting group?
Yes, absolutely. We don't have a fund or anything like that where we're like trying to make money. I know consulting orgs kind of differ on that, but we are working for service orgs, and we're also primarily engineering students and also mostly systems students, but we are open to any major. We're trying to make that super clear now because we've loved inviting people from different majors. But yeah, I mean, at our core, we're engineering students working for service organizations and working to optimize their operations. That's pretty different because consulting orgs, depending on who they are, they take clients from all over the place. Also, their students come in normally pre-com or com and with a business background or wanting to go into business in the future, whereas we have engineering students wanting to go into all different domains. And we're really focused on systems operations and educating people on what systems is. So we also host, like I mentioned earlier, systems advocacy events throughout the year. So we had a What is Systems event in the fall that was really successful. And so that's another element of us that's just really different, is we're advocating for systems and trying to tell people that you can have really impactful careers with this major. And if you are interested in any of these things, consider it, trying to raise awareness. And then the fact that we're only serving service orgs is huge. So yeah, I think just at our core, we have quite different missions. And I know consulting orgs, again, differ with what they're doing and what their missions are. But I think we are just fundamentally a different initiative.
Yeah.
Systems can be applied to so many different fields and you can have so many different job roles. But I think that, I don't know, I think that if you talk to a lot of people in systems, I would say a majority are going into consulting. There are a lot of benefits of consulting. I totally considered it. And you can scope out different career paths and get a understanding of different fields in one job. And there are a lot of benefits to it. But yeah, I am choosing to jump straight into government and something different. But I do think not only spreading an awareness for systems is important, but for the ways that it can be applied in a really unique and impactful way. And I'm trying to always talk to people in my cohort or people in the cohorts below me, the classes below me. But I think government work is a little niche that's being missed right now. And I understand the reasons for that in part, totally. But yeah, I think there's a great pathway there. And I think just, again, the concepts of efficiency and really thinking about how we can solve these problems also underpin solving systemic issues that we all know exist. I mean, it's really coming from an engineering background, but knowing that I want to do climate work and or work that ties to humanitarian impact in a way. So like disaster resilience is where I found that intersection point right now. and in my past research. I think it's incredibly powerful. And also, systems engineers can be really helpful and powerful in solving time-sensitive issues. And so if you think climate change is maybe one of the most, if not one of the most pressing time-sensitive issues of our generation, then that's where I found a good fit for now. I think on our website, we say we try to solve problems by reworking systems. How can you spin things around? Engineering as a whole, it's not just systems. We had to read a book at the beginning of our engineering experience called Subtract. It was all about how you don't always have to add to make things better. You don't even actually have to change to make things better. Like sometimes removing something can make things better. Even that just really changed the way I was thinking about things initially coming in. I was like, oh, like even building things, like this can be powerful to take away. So just rethinking how I solve problems all the time.
So BAPS didn't exist when you first were choosing your major. How did you find systems engineering and decide that you wanted to do it?
Yes, it was completely by word of mouth. And I've had the same experience as like seriously dozens and dozens of other people that I've talked to that chose systems. There is to my understanding and to the faculty's understanding, a very small percentage of people who come in knowing what systems engineering is and knowing that they want to do it. It doesn't have the bandwidth of people who like mechie, like people know what that is, or chemical engineering, biomedical engineering now is all the hype. So people know what these majors are. People do not know what systems is because it also exists at pretty few universities around the country. At other places, it's called industrial engineering. People find that easier to wrap their heads around, but it's a little bit different than what we do here because we have less of a manufacturing and industry tie. It's less about product management as it is in other places. Plugging another great organization, the Society of Women Engineers, their former president, I had a conversation with her after a meeting or something one day, and she looked at me and she was like, oh, you would be great for systems. And I was like, what do you even mean by that? I was like, I don't even know what this is. But she said, because you want to be an engineer, but you also want to be talking to people. People also refer to this as more like people-y, like people-facing form of engineering because you're working with the client constantly. And whoever that client is really obviously depends on the domain you're in. It can look very different. You're working for a client, you're trying to produce something for them. And so part of that is really understanding people and working to be a great listener and really listen to your clients and understand that the client doesn't always know their own problem. That's like the first lesson of systems, consulting, everything. So it's important. And I love being around people and making sure that what I'm doing is actually impacting someone. It's nice to do that in a somewhat direct way through systems. I found myself after I declared systems first year talking to a lot of new first years in my second year about systems and finding that I was loving my classes already, even though we were only in a couple at that point. I found myself advocating to a lot of new first years about this is an awesome major. You should at least like hear me out. And I want you to at least know what it is and know that it's an option for you. So I started doing that with a few people and I realized that it was working. And I was like, if people just hear about what this is, again, it's not the right fit for everyone, but nobody knew what it was. And that's a problem. It's an awareness issue. That's why I started it. It was going to be a systems advocacy org. And then again, I wanted to have more of a purpose than that. I wanted to serve the UVA community in some way. And my initial idea was we were going to have students submit cases about problems they were seeing on grounds. And I still feel like there's room for something like that somewhere. I think there are a lot of like enrollment and the housing issue that just exists everywhere for all years. Anyway, that was my initial idea was like, let's have students submit feedback on the university basically and solve problems in that way. But as I started networking and talking to people, I realized that there was a hole with service orgs and really organizations more broadly at UVA, but just inefficiencies that exist, redundancies, also just operational issues like CIOs. There's no accountability. And that's really, I figured out with all the projects we've done, there's always been some element of like, when we'll have meetings with them discussing their issues that they're struggling with, they're like, we don't know how to get people to do our work because you join an organization and 20% of the people who fill out your interest form come to any meetings, if that. And then the ones who actually participate and do the work that's involved with that organization is so slim. All the work falls on the exec board. I mean, and I'm dealing with that sometimes with BAPS too. And that's also been, it's been a paradox. It's been really interesting to watch and see the issues that have formed with my new CIO as we're trying to serve other CIOs and help them out. That's another component to this. But yeah, so as I just started networking, and also it began with some of my friends. One of my friends is now the president of Swap UVA, and he has been really great for us in giving us some projects and things to do for our first year for sure. But yeah, it was definitely, first semester, it was more like, what do you guys need help with? Like, we just want to help. And we were a little bit less picky. And then now word has spread. So it's been a lot easier to source clients. And I I'm a big believer in not trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And so I do think it was really important to reroute when we realized like, okay, maybe the whole students submitting cases might not be the best, but also like confidentiality. There are just a lot of different issues there. And just talking to people, I realized like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, I am part of a lot of organizations. And yeah, I do see these problems in a lot of organizations. Like, let's help there. And then I made the personal decision, since at this point it was really more my thing, that I just wanted it to be solely service orgs. And then now as we've grown, we've kept that value going.
No, I can totally relate. I'm like the new head of University Records, the music club, and it's so hard to even get our exec team to help out at shows. It's
Oh
miserable.
yeah, well, even the exec team. A lot of our projects have started maybe with the idea of, okay, what about just an exec restructuring scheme? Like, how do we make this work better? Because accountability, even on the exec team, is hard. So then you not only have all the work falling to the exec team, but falling to the president or the executive director. And one of our first projects was actually, we were solving the problem that the president was doing everything. And so one of our teams, they did an awesome job. They used like Power BI to automate a system for the actual purpose of the club. And so that kind of stuff could be done on the back end so that the president had more time to do her actual job, which was running the organization and not doing all the work. So yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, I might end up filling out a form after this.
Yeah, no, please do. Everyone, please do.
So who are some of your community partners? I know you mentioned SWAP, and
Yeah.
what specifically you've done for different ones.
Yeah. So in the fall, yes, we paired with 3 organizations. And the first one that we chatted with and networked with was the Gordy Center. And so obviously working on anti-hazing efforts. But we had 2 very different teams. One of them was working more on like media restructuring. And so that was interesting because thinking about like reducing inefficiencies and making a system more effective, it was through a social media lens. So looking at what they were posting and is this actually working for people? Because obviously the messages are extremely important, but they weren't reaching as many students as they were hoping to. So yeah, Gordy Center was one client. And then we worked with Swap, and they've been great, offering reusable options via clothing swaps. Everyone should go to a Swap on the lawn. They're awesome. But yeah, so they've been great. And we actually hosted a continue project with them in the spring. And the leader of that project is now our new director of project management. He was really successful with that project. Swap was working on scaling internationally, and he helped them do that. That was like more of a unique project, but he did a great job. We had Swap, Gordy, and Food Assist. Food Assist in the fall. Yeah, that's who I was referring to with, they had some operational issues. We had a team use Power BI, and they essentially helped automate the system. You have volunteers that are taking excess food from dining locations on grounds to the Salvation Army, and there was no way to track where volunteers were at any point in time. So it would be the exact team or the president texting like, hey, like, did you make it to the delivery spot? They had multiple deliveries every day. And so it's just a really inefficient system. And so that team was working on that issue in the fall. And then in the spring, we really grew. We had a variety of projects. We worked with yellow red safety apps. Some people maybe in Greek life might be familiar, but it's essentially a safety app where you can press a button and it alerts your friends that you feel like you're maybe in an uncomfortable situation. We also had a media team with them, and then also a technical team. I was trying to get a little bit more hands-on technical experience weaved into our projects for this past semester. Let's see, Josie's Way, Madison House, UVA wheelchair tennis team. We had 3 teams working for them, which was great. They were actually working on really building up the wheelchair tennis team because a lot of their exec was like graduating. And so that was really like, okay, how can we create a successful organization? And then the last example I'll share was one of our cooler ones this past semester was with Madison House. And essentially, they needed help automating their background checking system. And so we had a team work for them, and they got incredible results. Sometimes it's hard for me as I'm overseeing all these projects to know the ins and outs of each project. I try to attend presentations and such, but they did an incredible job. We had our point of contact with Madison House fill out a little form. He said that they like increased the efficiency of their processes and the speed by like 20% or something, which go them. That was really a prime example of optimizing some sort of system within a service organization.
Yeah. And you said that like now this second semester has already started to get more requests. So do you have a process for choosing which projects you accept?
We have been lucky so far. We haven't hit a point where we've had to turn down projects. Sometimes when we network, we'll realize that maybe this isn't the best fit, but we've actually run into a problem. We had 3 clients in the fall, and then we had 5 clients in the spring, and we facilitated 18 projects overall now, but every time we have way too many people on each project. We don't have an application process, and so we're not turning people away. And we like to view ourselves as a service organization. And so I like to try to be inclusive and just bring as many people into the mission as possible. But that being said, we bring in as many students as we can. And then we are responsible. We have a director of outreach now, an outreach team for this coming year. They're responsible for sourcing enough clients for the members that we have. So we had a problem last semester where we had, I think, 9 projects going, and we had to put upwards of like 8, 9 people on each team, which is a lot, especially systems people or comm people working on teams all the time. That is a lot for one project. And we're really working on expanding. We're trying to source more clients because we expect an influx of people in the fall. We got a lot of new people in the spring, and normally it works the other way. Obviously, you get more new members in the fall. So we're expecting an influx, so we need an equally large or high influx of clients.
Yeah. And why is it important for students to be able to get this like hands-on community project experience?
I think that's everything, because I think we think about internship experience or opportunities that exist for people to understand what they want to do in a job setting. And I know that, I mean, my friends and I, like, we talk about this all the time, but a lot of people don't know what they want to do. And that's okay. You go through high school and maybe you think you have an idea of something that you care about, but then and really you only have a couple summers in college to get an internship and really figure out what you want to do. And a lot of times you get an internship and it makes you just realize what you don't want to do, which is just as useful information. But I think it's important for students to practice working in different fields, different domains, any chance they can get. And so to be able to do that through a club experience in college is really cool. It's also been neat for me to network with these different organizations. I think networking is huge if some of these students want to go on an intern for them in the future, or just making connections with clients. And now every team that works for a client throughout the semester, they present to them at the end, and they have like a point of contact who's communicating with the client. So just keeping those relationships within Charlottesville going, and also just working to serve not only the UVA community, but the Charlottesville community. Most CIOs are working to help Charlottesville, the broader community, in some way, not just UVA, or their mission and operations impact Charlottesville in some way.
So if there's any students listening, how can they either get involved with helping out with BAPS or get their organization assistance from BAPS?
Yes, totally. So if you are an organization that's at all interested, our website is baps@uva.org. Pretty simple. And you'll see we have a tab on our website that's connect with us. And so it'll say for orgs or for students or for the public. If you're an org that's interested, go to our For Orgs page, and we have really easy project application form. No matter what, if you fill out that project application form, we can basically guarantee that our director of outreach or our outreach team now will have a meeting with you, and we'll talk about if this could be a good fit, because we're approaching this from the perspective we really do want to help, not we're picking through people. And then if you're a student, go to the For Students page, and we have a continued interest form. And so fill that out whenever, and we'll add you to our listserv immediately. We actually have on our listserv, and technically members now, over 250, which was a milestone we just passed. So join us. We would love to have you. I'm always plugging this form to people. Also, you can go on our Instagram, which is also BAPS@UVA with underscores in between each word, and see a little bit more about what we're doing. And DM us anytime, email us anytime. That's going to be bapscontact@virginia.edu. We're always open to chat, and we would love to get more people and orgs involved. Or if you just want to know about what systems engineering is, we would love to tell you more about it. And then also, just lastly, I would love to thank my executive team from this past year, the first ever exec team. They were huge in allowing this to happen, and really grateful for them. And also for the faculty who supported us, and especially to Bill Shearer, who was our original funder and really supported us in this idea. Huge shout out to him.
Another thank you to Bill Shearer, who recently passed away. He was the department chair at Systems Engineering. Katie wanted to give him a special mention since he was so integral to supporting and financing the project.
Really appreciate being here, and definitely everyone keep checking out this podcast and supporting this initiative.
Pilot Projects is a Sound on Grounds podcast. Sound on Grounds and all the projects featured in Pilot Projects are sponsored by Jefferson Trust grants. You can find more Sound on Grounds podcasts at virginiaaudio.com/soundongrounds. This podcast was audio engineered by Sara Bastianelli and Jason Evans Groth in the Robertson Media Center in Clemens Library. Written and edited by me, Haley Gillilan. Show cover was designed by Carina Velocci, a University of Virginia alum. All the music you heard was written and recorded by Jason Evans Groth. Thanks again to Katie Fidler.